I don't normally talk about TV shows, but this is the season finale of Game of Thrones. Hi everyone, my name is Chris and welcome to Tread Talks, where I walk on this treadmill to stay in shape while making videos for you fine people. This video is going to be a little bit more raw and less edited than it typically is because I just got done watching the season finale of Game of Thrones and I'm excited to talk about it with you guys. Now there's going to be lots of spoilers. I'm basically going to go through the whole episode and give you my reactions, so here we go. So I was excited to see that at the beginning of the episode, we're getting right down to it. The armies are facing off against each other, basically putting up a front saying, hey, don't do anything to our queen because you're going to have a battle that you're going to regret. And of course, in terms of who's feeling stronger in this situation, it's probably Daenerys with her army of the Unsullied, and then the Dothraki that come in. It's a very intimidating force, so much so that Bronn himself is saying, hey, we need at least 500 more canisters of pitch. I don't know how they're going to come up with that in the short amount of time that they have. I don't think that guy actually followed through on that order. He probably just said, okay, and then left, because who's going to check up on whether he provided 500 more barrels? And then we get our first shot of Theon in the episode. In the flashback at the beginning that tells you what happened previously, we get that shot of Theon jumping ship, so it tells me right away that there's something going to be happening with Theon in the episode. And we have Jon talking to Tyrion about the city and how many people are in there, and he can't imagine why everyone would want to be cramped. And of course they can't pass up an opportunity to have Tyrion talk about his expertise in brothels, confirming that the ones in the city are better than the ones in the countryside. And I'm glad that the Hound went down to make sure that the Walker was still alive after what happened earlier in the series with that hand that basically didn't make it. I wanted to make sure that the Walker would come through and it would convince people. In fact, that's one of the points of tension earlier in the episode that I thought was handled really well. Will the Walker still be alive or won't he? And kudos to that Walker really knowing when to keep still, when to play up that pregnant pause for dramatic effect. He's had some classical theater training, I'm sure. And then we finally get some characters coming together for some dramatic tension or for some interesting reunions. I like how Tyrion and Bronn finally have the interaction that I thought we would have had when Bronn set up that meeting with Tyrion and Jaime. And we also see the Hound and Brienne bonding over their mutual desire to protect Arya. And I look forward to when the Hound finally meets up with Arya again. And you know, this might be repetitive, but I hope there's a scene where we have Arya somehow demonstrating her acquired skills for the Hound to watch and be impressed by. I love that scene between Arya and Brienne, and I wouldn't mind seeing something like that again. Alright, so everyone's coming together in that big dragon pit, and the stares that everyone's giving everyone else. There's so much there. If only we could get an insight into what everyone's thinking, aside from the fact that I hate your guts and I want to kill you, which is what Cersei is thinking when she sees Tyrion. And of course everyone's wondering where Dany is, and they're waiting for her to come. Of course she's going to come on a dragon. That's like her show of power, her show of strength. But while that's happening, we have the Hound going up to the mountain. It's a brotherly reunion, which was a little bit more underwhelming than I thought it would be, and of course we're going to probably have that climactic battle in the next season. And also, what's wrong with your face? That I feel like it's degrading over time and that there's not much left there. If I was the Hound, I'd be a little bit more weirded out by what I was seeing behind that mask. Who would have thought that amongst those two brothers, it would be the Hound that ends up being the least disfigured of the two? Anyways, so finally Dany makes her entrance in the dragon. Surprise, surprise. Big show of force. And of course there's only two dragons, and I wonder, why did she bring two dragons? Why put your dragons at risk? Maybe she doesn't think that Cersei's making more of those crossbow things. I think she's going to make a ton of them in the next episode because of the Iron Bank. And I like seeing Euron's face when he sees the dragons for the first time. I think he's, at least on some level, genuinely impressed by the threat that they pose. But anyways, it finally looks like we're about to get started, and then, oh no, Theon, I have your sister! What an... Of all the people in this group on the Lannister side, Euron is the one that really feels like he's not like the others. He doesn't quite get the decorum of the situation, so he's like, hey, I've got your sister. Come bend the knee and I'll free her. And of course, Theon doesn't do anything. Euron gets told to sit down, and finally we get the big reveal. Will the Walker come out? And I love the tension in the moment because, sure, it's a little bit silly that the Walker doesn't come out until the crate gets tipped over. Maybe he had fallen asleep. I don't know if they nap. Anyways, but it plays to great effect that it comes out and the chain just gets snapped back at the very end before it reaches Cersei. It might have been a good idea to just let the chain go. Why not just let Cersei die there? You have an army that outnumbers them. It could have been a good idea, but like all good ideas that would end the series early, it doesn't happen, and instead we have Cersei demanding that Jon stay neutral after the big war. And that sets up the main contrast in the episode between Jon and Cersei. Jon tells the truth. Cersei lies her butt off. And of course Jon says, hey, I can't do it because I'm aligned to this other queen. And the look on Dany's face when he says that, partly I think she's shocked that he would do that at that moment in time, but also I think it's getting him points for the relationship that will develop later. And the cool thing is that pretty much everyone, seemingly except Cersei, understands that this is bigger than houses and families. We have Brienne abandoning the concept of loyalty to tell Jaime, just go talk to your freaking sister because we're all gonna freaking die. And of course, I think that's part of how Jaime starts to come around and realize that Cersei is just bad on a level that he hadn't thought of. I think he really believed her when she said that she would go fighting for the North. Of course, he believed her because he was planning for his armies to do exactly that. So I think it was beyond the pale for her to become such a scheming person behind his back. I think that felt like a betrayal for him, and it's part of what led to him leaving King's Landing. I also thought it was interesting, but a little dumb, for Jon to go through a demonstration of how to kill them. Hey, you can burn them, you can kill them with dragon glass. Why give that information before she's agreed to any sort of truce? I'm not sure why that makes sense. If anything, he could have just stabbed it with dragon glass without telling her that it's dragon glass, just to show we know ways to kill it without revealing that information that probably will play to Cersei's advantage later on in the next season. But before we do that, we have to follow Tyrion as he enters almost literally into the lion's den to convince Cersei to change her mind. And I loved how they played that out, because at some point in the conversation, we have to get beyond the point of Cersei wanting to kill Tyrion. And the way they did it was by having Tyrion just force that point. Just do it, just do it. And the sheer relief on his face when she doesn't ask the mountain to chop his head off. That was very well acted, and I was right there with him, relieved that she didn't follow through with that. Especially because, you know, it's the season finale, so you think that somebody's important's going to die. More on that later. And then, of course, you have Tyrion realizing that she's pregnant, and it's funny because I thought, when I first saw the scene, wow, Tyrion is really perceptive. But then later on in the episode, it becomes clear that she was doing all that as part of the ruse to lie to him and get him to believe that she was actually going to fight up in the north. So it's interesting, what I thought was perceptive, actually my wife thought, wow, she really made it obvious that she was pregnant. So then we get another little tender moment between Jon and Dany, and it's clear at this point, at least to me, that they're going to end up having some sort of relationship, and I'm wondering if this show is really going to convince me to root for an incestuous relationship. It probably will. But anyways, we have that scene, then Tyrion comes back, and apparently Cersei has agreed to fight for the North in a little bit of an un-Cersei-like manner, because the only assurance she has is that hopefully they'll remember that she was willing to go along with them and fight alongside them. And then it's back to Winterfell for one of my favorite parts of this episode, where Littlefinger just seemingly is manipulating Sansa more and more. I play this little game to figure out why people are doing things. I just assume the worst and assume that that's true. What the heck? I thought there was going to be another part where he goes, and then I assume the best. And I wonder if that makes more sense, but clearly no. And it's funny because throughout the scene I was talking to my wife and we were going back and forth as to whether she was seeing through this or not, and I said to her basically, listen, I don't think that character is that good of an actress. She's just an idiot and she's falling for it yet again. And then we get a scene between Theon and Jon, where Theon is basically trying to convince himself to make the decision that he knows he needs to make. And thankfully, Jon is the kind of person that is able to give him the encouragement that he needs without necessarily babying him to make that right decision. And then that gets immediately paid off as Theon goes to the boats, and, you know, he's going to have to take out this guy. That's how the Greyjoys work. Whoever the strong man is the one that, you know, gets to take charge. So they're having this fight. Here's the one thing I didn't find quite believable. Everybody knows he has no balls. So why would you keep trying to knee him in the crotch when you see that that's not working? But of course it makes for a nice turn of events, and it's nice that that disadvantage is finally an advantage for Theon Greyjoy. So he wins and they're off, and I look forward to seeing what happens in the next season where Theon finally takes on Euron and rescues his sister. My hope is that his redemption doesn't have to come at a sacrifice to his own life. I hope he's able to defeat his uncle in a very direct, straightforward manner, showing that he's not a coward without necessarily him having to die. I think that would be a terrible end for this particular character. Okay, back to Winterfell, and here is where the show played me like a fiddle, because that scene comes up and you have Arya surrounded by all of the soldiers, and she asks, are you sure you want to do this? That's the worst Arya impression ever. But anyways, that moment where they accuse Lord Baelish, and he's caught off guard, and I'm caught off guard, and I'm like, oh, this is happening finally! Sansa, you are a great actress, good for you! And just seeing him squirm, seeing him try different, you can imagine the wheels turning in his head. How am I going to get out of this one? Chaos is a ladder, where is the ladder so I can climb out? Well, you can't, because the guy is refusing to take you back. He doesn't care if you're the commander of the Vale or whatever you are, and then Oh, the begging, oh, I loved your mother. And every time he gets shut down, well, you betrayed her. Well, I loved you. Well, you betrayed me too. All the chickens are coming to roost, and the one who cuts the chicken's head off, that's a mixing of metaphors, is Arya, and that's so effective. And yes, he's finally gone. Some people like his scheming and conniving, but man, I was happy to see him go. That was the most satisfying moment of the episode for me. And speaking of betrayals, you have poor Jaime. He's planning the strategy to go up to the north, and Cersei comes in and she's like, I knew you were the stupidest of the Lannisters. What are you doing? I thought you loved this guy. Maybe the love has been lost for some time here. But finally it becomes clear that Cersei has been playing everyone. Wait, here's one thing. Okay, so Euron runs away after he sees the Walker, but that was part of the plan because he was going to take his ships over to Essen to bring back the army. Okay, so if that was planned, what would have been the plan if the Walker turned out to be fake? Would he have just stayed there? Would he have just played along? I'm not sure if it's interesting the level to which Cersei planned. But Cersei is just evil and deceptive, and she's cut him out completely from all of the scheming. And so you can sense the feeling of betrayal that he has when he realizes that she conspired with Euron without him. And then that moment where it's unclear whether Cersei is going to order the Mountain to kill Jaime, I was so relieved that it didn't happen because despite his shortcomings, I've really grown to like Jaime over the years, especially with how his character has changed. But you can tell that their relationship is now broken. He's leaving King's Landing. I'm unclear when he says that he's going to still ride to the north. Is it going to be by himself? Is he going to try to bring soldiers with him? Based on the last shot that we see of him in the episode, I think it's by himself. And it'll be good to see him reunited with Tyrion and fighting alongside him, hopefully, in the next season. And then the last two scenes of the episode play out. First you have Sam going to Winterfell to join in the fight, and we have Bran. And look, hey, he remembers me. I remember everything. He's really good at making things unnecessarily creepy. But anyways, they converse, and it's revealed through that montage where we get to see some of the actual stuff playing out because Bran is there listening to it. Jon's real identity, that he's a Targaryen, that he's the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Wait a second, did Sam just take credit for the discovery of the annulment that reveals Jon's true identity? He needs to give his wife some credit. And here we have the theme of lying and telling the truth coming into play again, where we see that the war was based on a lie. The lie that Rhaegar kidnapped and raped Robert Baratheon's betrothed. Jon is the only one telling the truth here, people! And then the final scene of the episode where that dragon comes and it tears down the wall. And you know, you should have seen this coming from the moment that he got the dragon, that's how they're going to break through. I wasn't sure how the magical spell that's supposedly there to keep people out, or to keep the walkers out, I'm not sure how that was supposed to come into play. But whatever that magical spell was, it did nothing against the blue fire that the dragon is shooting out. So anyway, so the wall comes down. It felt a little clean, like that gap in the wall was a little clean and easy for the walkers to walk through at the end. But otherwise, it was a very well done scene. It captured the epicness of the defeat of that wall. It was appropriately disheartening to see it come down. Now, I'm not sure at this point how this is going to turn into another full season. If they're already through the wall and the guy has a dragon, what's stopping him from just flying that dragon throughout the land just very quickly, decimating everything? It's what we thought that Dany could do to take over and win the war very quickly. I'm not sure what's stopping him from doing it. But of course, maybe the final season is not going to focus entirely on that battle with the walkers. Maybe that will be won, and then that'll be followed by figuring out how everything else is going to fall into place, how Cersei will be defeated, because I do believe she's going to be defeated. In fact, let's turn this into a prediction section. My predictions for the next season of Game of Thrones. I think Jon is going to figure out that Daenerys is his aunt, and he's not going to care about it. I think the Hound is going to fight the Mountain, and I think the Hound will win. I know I'm going out on a limb with some really wacky predictions here, but I think that will happen. I think Dany's going to become pregnant with Jon's kid, because wow, that biased witch was wrong. You can have babies. And then Dany's baby will go up against Cersei's baby, and they'll compete and who's cuter, and I'm going off the rails here, let's keep going. I also think Tyrion is going to survive until the very end, and whoever the king or queen is, he's going to be the hand of the king or the queen. I think Varys is going to die in the way that the Red Lady said, because hey, what's going to come of that if not that? Okay, no more predictions for me because I'm not doing anything interesting or analytical, I'm just guessing at this point. So if you like this video and you want to keep up with my content, please like and subscribe. I typically do movie reviews and fitness videos, really trying to get into the psychology of how to lose weight. With that said, you can also hit the little bell icon to be notified when a new video goes up. Either way, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.